Hey guys, tonight we sail for the new world. It's 1609, and you are an English adventurer leaving the crowded streets of London behind. The air is filled with promises of a Virginian paradise, a land of easy riches and abundant food. You dream of gold nuggets in the rivers and a life of gentlemanly ease. But the paradise is a fantasy, and let's be honest, when the brutal winter siege begins and the last of the dogs and rats have been eaten, you will be faced with a final, terrible choice, one that archaeologists would not be able to confirm for another 400 years. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. As always, I'd love to see where in the world you're listening from, so please drop your city and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. London, 1606. Your world is a city of ambition, a place of rising merchants and restless aristocrats, all hungry for a piece of the new expanding globe. England is a small, damp island, and it is looking west with envious eyes. Spain is pulling a river of gold and silver from its American colonies, and every Englishman with a shred of ambition believes that a similar, or even greater, fortune is waiting for them in the vast, unknown lands of North America. The story of Jamestown does not begin in the mud of a Virginian swamp, but here, in the wood-panelled, smoke-filled rooms of London's taverns and counting houses. It begins not as an adventure, but as a business venture. You are a man of some means, a merchant or a gentleman with a small inheritance, and you are invited to a meeting of the newly formed Virginia Company of London. The room is buzzing with an energy that is part financial speculation, part nationalistic fervor. You listen as the company's directors, shrewd and powerful men, lay out their vision. They unroll a crude, almost fantastical map of the new world. Their finger traces the coastline of a place they call Virginia, named for the Virgin Queen Elizabeth. They speak of it as a new Eden, a land of gentle climates, like the south of France, with fertile soil that will produce exotic crops with little effort. They speak, most importantly, of gold. Their prospectuses and pamphlets, printed and distributed all over London, hint that the hills of Virginia are filled with it, that the native people wear it as simple decoration, unaware of its true value. They speak of it as a strategic foothold against the Spanish Empire, and they speak of it as a shortcut. The great prize of the age is a direct sea route to the riches of China and the East Indies. The Spanish control the southern route. The northern route is a frozen wasteland. But Virginia, they argue, might hold the key, a great river that will lead through the continent to the Pacific. A northwest passage that will make its discoverers the richest men in the world. It is a powerful, intoxicating dream, a perfect blend of profit, patriotism, and piety. The charter, granted by King James I himself, speaks not only of trade, but of a sacred duty to bring the Christian faith to the native savages. You listen, and you are convinced. This is not just an investment, it is a chance to be a part of history. You buy a share in the company. You watch as the first ships are prepared, as the first 100 men and boys are selected to go. It is a venture built on a foundation of profound, almost willful, ignorance. No one truly knows what awaits them. The maps are wrong, the climate is not gentle, and there is no gold. As you watch the first small ships, the Susan Constant, the Godspeed, and the Discovery sail down the Thames in December of 1606, you are filled with a sense of immense, optimistic pride. You are an owner, an adventurer in this great new enterprise. You imagine the letters that will soon return, filled with news of gold mines discovered, of a passage to China found, of a prosperous and grateful new English nation rising in the wilderness. You do not imagine the reality. You do not imagine the brackish water, the malarial swamps, the hostile politics of a powerful native empire, or the brutal truth that in this new world the most valuable commodity will not be gold, but a simple handful of corn. The entire grand enterprise, born here in the heart of the world's most powerful city, is based on a complete and utter fantasy. It is a story written on paper, and it is about to collide with a reality that no one can possibly foresee. April 1607. After a grueling 4-month voyage across the stormy Atlantic, your 3 small ships finally enter the calm, expansive waters of the Chesapeake Bay. The sight of land is a miracle, a promise fulfilled. The air is soft and warm, thick with the scent of pine and rich earth. The shoreline is a dense, impossibly green wall of forest, a world of staggering, beautiful, and utterly intimidating wildness. This is it, Virginia, the New Eden. But the men who step ashore are not the hardened farmers and pioneers a New Eden requires. You, as a chronicler of the expedition, look upon the company of 104 men and boys, and you see the first, fatal flaw in the Virginia Company's grand design. Nearly half of them are listed on the ship's manifest as gentlemen. They are the younger sons of aristocrats, men with no inheritance and no prospects in England, who have come to the New World not to toil, but to command. They have come for a quick fortune, to find the gold that will restore their status back home. They are accompanied by their personal servants, and they view manual labor, the felling of trees, the digging of soil, as a profound social disgrace, an insult to their rank. The rest of the company is a motley collection of commoners. There is a blacksmith, a tailor, a barber, and a handful of carpenters, but there are tragically few men who know the most essential skill of all, how to farm. They are adventurers, soldiers of fortune, and hopeful youths, not settlers. They have brought with them the rigid, top-heavy class structure of London and planted it in the mud of a world that has no use for it. The first critical decision is where to build your settlement. Against the advice of some, the council, dominated by the gentlemen, chooses a small, swampy peninsula on the James River. It is a place they believe is easily defensible against the Spanish, their great European rivals, who they fear far more than the native inhabitants. They do not see the brackish, undrinkable water at high tide. They do not see the mosquito-infested marshes that will breed disease in the summer. They do not see the lack of fresh springs. They see a military position, not a place to live. They name it Jamestown in honor of their king. The initial work is a frantic, disorganized effort to create a sliver of England in the wilderness. Under the direction of the council, the men begin to construct a great triangular fort. The gentlemen, to their credit, take up arms and stand guard, but they refuse to take up an axe or a spade. The burden of the immense physical labor falls upon the few commoners who work resentfully under the sweltering Virginia Sunday. The internal conflicts begin almost immediately. The president of the council, Edward Maria Wingfield, is a man of high birth but poor leadership, hoarding the best of the supplies for himself and his fellow gentlemen. Factions form, and arguments over strategy and status are a constant, simmering poison within the small community. While some men labor to build the palisade walls, others, driven by the gold fever that fueled the entire expedition, spend their days along the riverbank. You watch them, a scene of almost comical tragedy, as they pick up any rock that glitters, convinced it is a sign of gold. They bring back bucketfuls of fool's gold iron pyrite, which the colony's refiner, with great and foolish ceremony, declares to be the real thing. Precious time and energy that should be spent planting crops and building proper houses is wasted on this glittering fantasy. You stand at the edge of the clearing as the sun sets. The sounds of the English axes are rude, foreign intrusion into the ancient quiet of the forest. You look at the half-finished fort, at the squabbling gentlemen, and at the hopeful men washing dirt in the river, searching for a fortune that does not exist. You are a practical man, and you see a deep and dangerous disconnect between the grand ambitions of the Virginia Company and the harsh reality of this place. These men believe their mission is to impose their will upon the land. They do not yet understand that their survival depends on their ability to adapt to it. They have built a fort to protect them from the Spanish, but they have not yet learned how to protect themselves from the land itself, from its water, its diseases, and its coming seasons. They believe they are the masters of this new world. They do not yet know that they are its most vulnerable and unprepared inhabitants. May 1607. From the moment you landed, you have been aware of them. At first, they were just shadows in the trees, fleeting glimpses of copper skin and dark hair at the edge of a clearing. Then came the first, tense encounters. Silent, painted men appearing at the edge of your worksite, armed with powerful longbows, their expressions a mixture of intense curiosity and profound suspicion. To you and your fellow Englishmen, they are the naturals, the savages, a simple, primitive people living without order or civility in a wild land. This, like so much else you believe, is a catastrophic miscalculation. Your small, struggling fort on the James River is not an outpost in an empty wilderness. It is an unwanted intrusion into the heart of a powerful and ancient nation. This land is not Virginia. It is Tsenacomaca, a paramount chiefdom of over 30 distinct tribes, all paying tribute to one man, the great chief Wahun Seneca, whom you will come to know as Chief Powhatan. The narrative shifts, leaving your small wooden fort behind and moving into this vast established world. We see the Powhatan way of life, a world that is deeply and inextricably connected to the rhythms of the land. Their villages are not random collections of huts, but carefully planned communities of long, bark-covered houses called yahakins, surrounded by vast communal fields. Here, the agriculture is not the back-breaking, inefficient work of the English with their heavy plows, but a sophisticated, sustainable system. The Powhatan women cultivate the three sisters, corn, beans, and squash, planted together in a symbiotic marvel of agricultural engineering. The tall cornstalks provide a natural pole for the bean vines to climb. The beans, in turn, fix nitrogen in the soil, enriching it for the other plants. And the broad, sprawling leaves of the squash create a living mulch that retains moisture and suppresses weeds. It is a system perfected over centuries, one that provides a rich and reliable bounty with an efficiency the English cannot begin to comprehend. Their world is governed by a complex web of social and political rules. We see Chief Powhatan in his capital at Werowocomoco. He is not a simple tribal chieftain. He is an emperor, a ruler who controls the trade, diplomacy, and warfare of his entire nation through a network of lesser chiefs, many of whom are his own kinsmen. He is a shrewd and experienced leader who has dealt with European interlopers before the Spanish, who came with swords and disease decades earlier. A scene unfolds in the great longhouse. The chief is meeting with his council. They discuss the newcomers, the Tassantassas, the strangers. Their scouts have been watching you since you arrived. They report on your strange, heavy clothes, your loud, clumsy metal tools. They report your baffling incompetence. You drink the brackish water that makes you sick, you plant your seeds at the wrong time, and you seem to spend most of your energy searching for shiny rocks in the mud. The council debates what to do. Some younger, hot-headed warriors argue for an immediate, overwhelming attack to wipe out the intruders before they can become a threat. But Powhatan, older and wiser, advocates for a different strategy: containment and observation. He sees your power, the astonishing, thunderous power of your muskets, but he also sees your weakness. He sees your desperation for food. He believes you are a small, isolated group, a temporary nuisance that will either die out from your own foolishness or can be managed and perhaps even used. Your copper and your iron tools are valuable, and he can control you by controlling the flow of corn. The chapter ends from the perspective of a Powhatan warrior looking out from the edge of the forest at your small, struggling fort. He does not see a glorious new outpost of a great empire. He sees a strange, pale, and pathetic people, inexplicably weak and helpless in a land of abundance. He sees men who cannot hunt, who cannot farm, who sicken easily, and who squabble amongst themselves like children. He feels not fear, but a mixture of pity and contempt. And yet, there is a lingering sense of unease. These strangers are foolish, but they are also persistent. They have brought with them a new kind of metal, a new kind of thunder. And as he watches the English flag, a strange pattern of crossed lines hanging limply in the humid air, he feels a quiet, cold premonition that the arrival of these helpless men signals the beginning of a profound and dangerous change to his entire world. Summer 1607. The Virginian paradise has revealed its true, brutal nature. The swampy ground of your fort breeds sickness in the humid air. The brackish water of the James River poisons your gut. The gentlemen adventurers, who dreamed of finding gold, are instead dying of fever, dysentery, and a profound, listless despair. The communal food stores are nearly empty, and the few crops you have planted wither in the unfamiliar soil. The colony is failing. It is dying from the inside out, a victim of its own poor planning and proud incompetence. Out of this crucible of failure, a new leader emerges. He is not a man of high birth, but a man of action. Captain John Smith. He is a commoner, a veteran of brutal wars in Eastern Europe, a man who has known slavery and escape. He has no patience for the squabbling council of gentlemen. He takes control not by election, but by sheer force of will and undeniable competence. He imposes a new, simple and revolutionary rule upon the starving, fractious colony, a law that strikes at the very heart of the English class system you have so carefully imported. He that will not work, Smith declares, his voice ringing through the fort, shall not eat. Under his command, the lazy and the inept are forced to labor. Men who have never held an axe in their lives are sent to fell trees. Gentlemen are made to dig and to build. It is a bitter medicine, and it earns Smith the hatred of many of the colony's elite. But it works. The fort is strengthened, and a semblance of order is restored. But Smith knows that discipline alone cannot fill an empty belly. The colony's only hope for survival lies in the vast, populous, and now deeply suspicious world of the Powhatan that surrounds them. While the other leaders see the natives as an obstacle, Smith sees them as a necessity. He understands that they hold the key to the colony's survival, their corn. This chapter follows one of his tense, dangerous trading expeditions. You, the chronicler, are chosen to accompany him to record the events. You travel by a small barge, a pinnace, up one of the great rivers into the heart of Tsenacomaca. The journey is a foray into an alien world. You pass the ordered, prosperous villages of the Powhatan, the smoke from their fires rising peacefully into the sky, their vast fields of corn a heartbreaking testament to their agricultural skill. You arrive at a large town ruled by one of Powhatan's lesser chiefs. The meeting is a masterpiece of bluff and bravado. Smith does not come as a beggar, though that is what you are. He comes as a man of power. Your party is small, but you are armed with muskets, a terrifying and magical weapon to the natives. The chief is willing to trade, but his price is high. He does not want your English beads or trinkets. He wants metal. He wants the things that will give him an advantage over his own rivals. The negotiation is a tense dance. Smith displays the wares, a handful of shining copper plates, a few iron hatchets. The chief's eyes gleam with desire. Copper, to the Powhatan, is more valuable than gold. It is a symbol of status and spiritual power. An iron hatchet is a tool of almost supernatural efficiency, able to do the work of 10 men with stone axes. This is the iron bargain. The chief offers a small basket of corn in exchange for a hatchet. Smith laughs, refusing the offer with a show of contempt. He knows that to appear weak is to be destroyed. He implies that if a fair trade cannot be reached, he will be forced to take what he needs. It is a dangerous, almost suicidal bluff. But it works. By the end of the day, a bargain has been struck. Your small boat is filled to the brim with life-saving corn, enough to feed the colony for another month. In exchange, you have given the Powhatan a handful of metal tools that will subtly begin to change the balance of power in their own world forever. As you sail back down the river, the heavy weight of the corn a reassuring presence in the boat, you reflect on the man beside you. John Smith is not a gentle or a particularly good man. He is arrogant, ruthless, and driven by a relentless ambition. But you know, with an absolute certainty, that he is the only reason you are still alive. He is the iron will that is holding this fragile colony together. You look at the sacks of corn, and then you think of the iron hatchets you left behind. You have made a bargain, an exchange of food for power. This peace is not built on friendship or trust. It is built on a foundation of mutual need and thinly veiled threats. It is a fragile, dangerous equilibrium, and you wonder what will happen to you all if the one man who understands how to maintain that balance is ever taken away. Late summer, 1609, a fragile, brittle peace has settled over Jamestown. Under the iron-fisted rule of Captain John Smith, the colony has found a rhythm of survival. His simple, brutal law, "He that will not work shall not eat," has transformed the lazy and the aristocratic into a functioning workforce. The palisade walls are strong, new houses have been built, and most importantly, the storehouse contains a modest but vital supply of corn, won through Smith's dangerous and coercive diplomacy with the Powhatan. You, as the chronicler, have documented this transformation. You have seen Smith lead parties into the wilderness, returning not with fool's gold, but with life-saving food. He is not a man who is loved. He is too arrogant, too ambitious, and his common birth is a constant source of resentment for the gentlemen of the council. But he is respected, and he is feared, both by the colonists and, it seems, by the native tribes. He is the central pillar supporting the entire precarious structure of the colony. And then, in a single, inexplicable moment of pure random chance, that pillar is shattered. The accident happens on the river. Smith is returning from a trading and exploration mission up the James. He is asleep in the back of the boat, his journey a success, his mind at ease. He has a large pouch of gunpowder, the tool of his authority and the most volatile substance in your world, resting on his lap. What happens next is a mystery. Perhaps a spark from a crewman's pipe, perhaps a stray spark from the discharge of a musket at a passing bird. Whatever the cause, the gunpowder pouch ignites. The explosion is not large, but it is catastrophic. A flash of searing white light, a deafening bang, and Smith is engulfed in flames. He awakens to a world of pure, unimaginable agony, his clothes on fire, the flesh of his thighs burned away to the bone. Thinking only to extinguish the flames, he instinctively leaps overboard into the river. He is pulled from the water, alive, but horribly, grievously wounded. He is brought back to Jamestown not as the conquering commander, but as a maimed and screaming patient. The colony's surgeon, a man of limited skill, can do nothing for such a wound. The burn is too deep. The risk of infection in the filthy, humid environment of the fort is a certainty. There is no medicine, no skill in the New World that can save him. There is only one slim hope, a long, agonizing voyage back to England. The news of his condition spreads through the fort, and with it, a profound and immediate shift in the colony's political landscape. The gentlemen of the council, men like George Percy and John Ratcliffe, whom Smith had sidelined and humiliated with his meritocratic rule, see their opportunity. Their concern for Smith's health is a thin, transparent veil for their own relief and ambition. The iron-willed tyrant who forced them to labor is now broken. The power vacuum is immediate. You watch as they take control, their discussions no longer about planting and fortification, but about the restoration of their own status. They begin to undo Smith's work, their arrogance returning now that the man who held it in check is incapacitated. The day of his departure is a somber, unsettling affair. You watch as Captain John Smith, the man who was the living embodiment of the colony's will to survive, is carried on a stretcher to the ship that will take him home. He is a ghost, his face pale and contorted in pain, his body a ruin. He will survive, but his time in Virginia is over. You stand at the water's edge and watch the ship's sails catch the wind, carrying away the one man the Powhatan truly respected and feared. As the vessel shrinks into a speck on the horizon, you are filled with a deep and chilling sense of foreboding. The pillar has been removed. The gentlemen are back in charge. The fragile iron bargain with the natives is broken. The discipline that held the colony together is gone. You look at the dwindling food stores. You look at the faces of the feuding, incompetent new leaders, and you look out at the vast, watchful wilderness that surrounds you. The colony is adrift, a ship that has just lost its rudder in the heart of a gathering storm. October 1609. A month has passed since the ship carrying Captain Smith vanished over the horizon. A new, fragile order has settled in Jamestown, but it is an order built on the shaky foundations of the gentleman's pride. The colony's new president, George Percy, is a man of noble birth, but is often sick and lacks Smith's iron will. The days of forced, communal labour are over. The gentlemen once again direct, and the commoners work with a sullen, resentful air. There is an unspoken belief among the leadership that Smith's coercive tactics are no longer needed, that a more civilized approach to dealing with the Powhatan can now be restored. But there is a greater, more elemental power at work, an enemy that no amount of diplomacy or discipline can defeat. You begin to notice it in the small, unsettling details of your daily life. The air is unusually dry for autumn, the days still unnaturally hot. The leaves on the trees did not turn to vibrant reds and yellows. They simply withered, turned a brittle brown, and fell, leaving the forest looking skeletal and gaunt before its time. The James River, the colony's very lifeblood, is sick. It is running low and slow, and with the lack of fresh water flowing down from the mountains, the salty tide from the sea pushes further and further upstream. The water you draw from the river near the fort is now almost undrinkably brackish, a slow poison that afflicts the gut and saps the strength. Your own English gardens within the fort are a testament to the land's hostility. The wheat and barley you tried to plant have grown into thin, pathetic stalks, their heads holding only a few shriveled, dusty grains. It is a pitiful harvest, not even enough to last a few weeks, let alone an entire winter. You and everyone in the fort can see that the land is suffering. You blame it on a poor season, on your own lack of farming knowledge, on the strangeness of this new world. You do not know the true scale of the catastrophe. Here, the voice of the chronicler must step aside for the voice of a deeper history, a history written in the silent, patient language of the trees. Centuries from your time, scientists will drill into the ancient bald cypress trees of this region. In the rings of these trees they will find the unwritten diary of the climate. They will discover that the years from 1606 to 1612 were the driest period in this land in over 700 years. The colonists of Jamestown did not just have bad luck, they had, through a truly cosmic misfortune, chosen to plant their flag in the heart of a once-in-a-millennium drought. This great thirst is choking not just your small English outpost, but the entire world of the Powhatan. In their villages, the situation is just as desperate. Their own magnificent fields of corn, the product of 1,000 years of agricultural wisdom, are failing. The stalks are stunted, the ears of corn small and withered. Their own communal storehouses, the granaries that are their only defense against the winter, are dangerously low. The Powhatan shamans have prayed for rain, but the skies have remained a hard, unforgiving blue. The hunters report that the deer are thin and the fish are scarce in the shallow, warm rivers. Chief Wahunsanakar knows that his people are facing their own time of great hunger. His refusal to trade with the English is no longer just a political strategy. It is a matter of pure, desperate survival. Every grain of corn he gives to the strangers is a grain stolen from the mouth of a Powhatan child. Back in Jamestown, you are blind to this wider reality. You see only the empty English storehouse and the full Powhatan ones. Your new leaders, failing to understand the drought's devastating impact, interpret the Powhatan's refusal to trade as an act of pure, calculated malice, a declaration of a silent war. You stand on the palisade wall, looking out at the dying landscape. To the west, the forest is a dry, whispering tinderbox. To the east, the river is a salty, undrinkable deception. And all around you, the people of the Powhatan, once your reluctant saviors, are now your hostile, silent jailers. You are trapped, not just by the wooden walls of your fort, but by your own profound ignorance of the very land you have come to conquer. The stage for the starving time is now set. Late summer, 1609. An anxious, watchful quiet has settled over Jamestown. The drought has withered your crops, and the Powhatan have withdrawn their trade, leaving your communal storehouse perilously empty. Every face in the fort is thin. Every conversation is laced with a single desperate question. When will the supply fleet arrive? All hope is now fixed on the horizon, on the promise of the third supply, a great flotilla of 9 ships sent from London, carrying new leadership, hundreds of new colonists, and enough food to see you through the coming winter. The fleet is not just a delivery of supplies. It is the colony's salvation. Far out in the vast, empty expanse of the Atlantic, that salvation is fighting for its life. The 9 ships of the third supply have had a smooth, uneventful crossing, but as they approach the coast of the New World, the sky turns a strange, ominous, coppery color. The sea, which had been a gentle, rolling blue, becomes a dark, oily swell. The experienced sailors on the flagship, the Sea Venture, look to the heavens and mutter prayers. They know these signs. This is the breath of a hurricane. The storm strikes with a demonic, explosive fury. The fleet is scattered, the smaller ships tossed about like wooden toys in a maelstrom of wind and water. The Sea Venture, the largest and most important ship, finds itself at the heart of the tempest. For 3 days and 3 nights, it is a battle for survival. The wind does not just howl, it screams, a constant, deafening shriek that tears the great sails from the masts and shreds them to ribbons. Waves, the size of small mountains, crash over the decks, smashing boats and sweeping away anything not tied down. The ship's timbers, stressed beyond their limits, begin to groan and split. The caulking between the planks is forced out by the immense pressure of the sea. The ship begins to take on water. At first, it is a trickle, but it soon becomes a torrent, pouring into the hold. The sound of the rising water is a death knell. The ship's governor, Sir Thomas Gates, and the fleet's admiral, Sir George Somers, the new powerful leaders of the colony, are now reduced to the same level as the lowest sailor. They stand in the rising, freezing water, bailing with buckets, their authority meaningless in the face of the storm. For 3 days, every soul on board, 150 men, women and children, works without rest. They bail, they work the pumps, they pray. They are exhausted, hopeless, certain they are about to sink into the abyss. On the 4th morning, a cry comes from Admiral Somers himself. Land. Through a break in the storm, they see it, the green shores of an island. It is the dreaded Isle of Devil's Bermuda, an uninhabited island feared by all sailors and surrounded by a treacherous ring of coral reefs. But to the people on the sinking Sea Venture, it is a miracle. Somers, a brilliant navigator, makes a desperate, calculated decision. He deliberately steers the dying ship towards the reef, wedging it firmly between 2 large coral heads. The ship is destroyed, but every single person on board is able to make it safely to the shore. They are shipwrecked, but they are alive. They are, for now, lost to the world. Back in Jamestown, the world knows nothing of this. All you know is that, one by one, the ships of the third supply begin to limp into the James River. They are battered, scattered, and their crews are traumatized, and they are all missing their flagship. The joy of seeing the English sails is quickly replaced by a growing, sickening dread. You watch as the new colonists disembark, hundreds of them, pale and hungry from their own difficult voyage. But the vital supplies, the great stores of food and equipment that were meant to save the colony, do not appear. They were on the Sea Venture, You stand at the gate of the fort, watching the last of the new arrivals straggle in. Your mind, the mind of an accountant, does the grim arithmetic. The population of Jamestown has just swelled from a struggling 200 to a desperate 500. The number of mouths to feed has more than doubled, but the amount of food in the storehouse has not increased by a single grain. The long-awaited rescue has been a catastrophic failure. The fleet that was meant to be your salvation has instead delivered a fresh consignment of the doomed. The Powhatan siege continues outside your walls, and now a new, more terrible siege is beginning within. The siege of hunger. The starving time has begun. October 1609. A cold, palpable fear has settled over Jamestown. The last of the supply ships has long since vanished down the James River, leaving behind a legacy of hunger and despair. The fort is now dangerously, impossibly overcrowded. 500 souls are crammed into a space meant for half that number, a chaotic jumble of original settlers, sickly newcomers, and a few unfortunate Poles and Germans brought in for their artisan skills. The new leadership, a council of squabbling gentlemen, is utterly incapable of managing the crisis. Their authority is a joke, their plans are non-existent. Every man can feel the colony beginning to fray at the seams. While chaos reigns within your wooden walls, a quiet, deadly order is being imposed from without. In his capital at Werowokomoko, the great chief Wahansanaka has been watching and waiting. His scouts, silent shadows in the forest, have brought him all the news he needs. They have told him of Captain Smith's departure, the one Tassantassa, stranger, he respected for his strength. They have told him of the arrival of the new ships, which brought not strength but a great flock of the weak and the hungry. And they have told him of the great drought, which has withered his own people's corn and filled his storehouses with a meagre supply for the coming winter. He is the paramount chief of this land, and he sees the English not as neighbours, but as a persistent, festering wound. They take up his best land, their strange diseases afflict his people, and their constant demands for food are an unsustainable drain on a nation that is itself facing starvation. He has tried managing them through the coercive trade of the iron bargain. Now, with their one strong leader gone and their numbers swelled with the useless and the sick, he sees a different opportunity, not to manage them, but to erase them. The command he gives is one of brutal, strategic genius. There will be no great, costly assault on the fort. An attack would be a waste of his warriors' lives against the English muskets. His strategy is far more patient and far more lethal. He orders a siege. The change is not immediate and violent, but slow and suffocating. You first notice it when a small foraging party of 10 men, sent out to hunt for deer, does not return. A few days later, 2 men who sneak out to try their luck fishing in the river are found dead at the water's edge, their bodies pierced with arrows. The message is clear. The world outside the palisade walls is now a death trap. The Powhatan warriors are a constant, invisible presence. You never see them, but you know they are there. A man who wanders too far from the gate to relieve himself is met with a single, silent arrow from the trees. Any of your remaining livestock that strays from the fort is killed. The river, once your highway to the world, is now watched. The forest, which you once saw as a larder of potential food, is now a green wall of death. The fort, the great triangular symbol of your English defiance, has become your prison. The psychological effect is devastating. You are trapped, a small, starving island of Englishness in a vast and hostile Powhatan sea. You spend your days looking out from the watchtowers, scanning the silent tree line for any sign of movement, but you see nothing. The enemy is a ghost, everywhere and nowhere at once. The fear of a direct attack is replaced by the much slower, more terrifying dread of being slowly starved to death, surrounded by a land of plenty that you cannot touch. You stand on the palisade wall, looking out at the beautiful, indifferent Virginia landscape. The autumn leaves are turning, a spectacle of color that seems to mock your grim situation. You can smell the wood smoke from the Powhatan villages, a scent that now means not just a different people, but a world with food, a world of warmth, a world you are forever barred from. The great irony of your situation is overwhelming. You are the conquerors. You are the representatives of a great and powerful empire. But you are now helpless prisoners, surrounded and contained by a people you dismissed as savages. You realize the chief's strategy is not just to kill you with hunger, it is to kill you with despair. He has sealed you inside your own wooden tomb and is simply waiting for winter to do the rest of his work for him. November 1609. The first true cold of a Virginian winter begins to settle in the air, a damp, biting chill that seeps through the cracks in your wattle and daub house. But it is the cold in your belly that is the most terrifying. The last of the communal grain, the final buffer against starvation, is gone. The great cask of cornmeal in the storehouse, which was meant to last all winter, has been scraped clean in a matter of weeks by the 500 hungry souls trapped within these walls. The siege is absolute. The Powhatan are ghosts in the woods, their presence felt but never seen, and their message is clear. There will be no trade, no mercy. The fort is now an island, cut off from the world, and its inhabitants must begin to consume themselves. The decision, when it comes from the council led by George Percy, is grim but inevitable. The first to be sacrificed are the horses. There are only a few, brought over at great expense, symbols of a gentleman's status and vital assets for the exploration and labor that now seems like a distant dream. You watch as the first horse, a fine but now painfully thin creature, is led to the center of the fort. There is no ceremony, just a quiet, grim finality. The sound of the musket shot echoes unnaturally in the enclosed space. That night, you eat horse meat for the first time in your life. The starving colonists fall upon the stringy, tough meat with a desperate, animal hunger. It is a strange and unsettling meal. This is not the beef of an English feast. It is the flesh of a creature you knew, a beast of burden that was a part of your small, struggling world. Eating it feels like a kind of cannibalism, a breaking of a sacred trust between man and animal. But the hunger is stronger than the sentiment. After the horses are gone, a week later, the dogs are next. These are the pets, the companions, the hunting dogs that were a comfort and a joy in the early lonely days. Now they are looked upon with a new, terrible calculus. They are no longer friends, they are meat. The familiar sounds of barking and playing vanish from the fort, replaced by an eerie, profound silence. The descent continues, a methodical stripping away of your civilized world. The few chickens that have survived are eaten, their eggs a long-forgotten luxury. Then the cats, which had been so vital for keeping the rats in check, are themselves hunted down in the alleys of the fort. And then, all that is left are the rats and the mice. A new, grim economy emerges within the walls of Jamestown. A living mouse becomes a valuable commodity. Men, once proud gentlemen and soldiers, now spend their days in the dark, filthy corners of the fort, hunched and silent, waiting for the skittering sound of a rodent. You witness a grown man weep with joy after catching a single scrawny rat in a crude trap. This is what you have become, hunters of vermin, your world reduced to the same level as the pests that infest your homes. You sit in your small house, chewing on a piece of roasted rat, the taste oily and foul, but it is sustenance. It is life. You look around at the silent fort. The stables are empty. There are no dogs to bark at a strange sound, no cats to curl by the fire. The only animal sounds left are the low, weak moans of the sick and the desperate, hungry cries of your fellow men. You realize with a chilling clarity that you have consumed your entire domestic world. You have eaten every living thing that connected you to the life you once knew, to the idea of an English settlement. You have burned all the furniture for warmth and eaten all the animals for food. All that is left inside these walls are the colonists themselves, and the hunger is not satisfied. It is only growing stronger. December 1609, the heart of winter. The world outside the palisade is a frozen, silent expanse. The world inside is a hell of a different sort. The last of the rats has been eaten. The final, scrawny cat has been devoured. The silence in the fort is now absolute, a profound and terrifying quiet, broken only by the whisper of the wind, the low moans of the dying, and the insistent, gnawing growl of your own empty stomach. Hunger is no longer an ache or a discomfort. It has become the sole governing reality of your existence. It is a madness, a constant, howling emptiness that eclipses all other thought, all other feeling. It has burned away your memory of a life before, of feasts and full bellies. There is only the now, and the now is a void that must be filled. When there is no food left, you must redefine what food means. The great, slow feast upon the inedible begins. It starts with the leather. You watch as men, their eyes glazed with a desperate, feverish light, take the very shoes from their feet. They cut the tough, cured leather into strips and drop them into pots of boiling water. The process takes hours, a slow, stinking simmer over a meager fire fueled by the scavenged wood of a demolished, abandoned house. Eventually, the leather softens, breaking down into a foul-smelling, glutinous jelly. You watch a man who was once a proud gentleman, a man who came here dreaming of gold, greedily spoon this vile, shimmering substance into his mouth. There is no nourishment in it, no sustenance. It is a trick you play on your own stomach, a desperate attempt to fill the void with a ghost of a meal. You too partake. The jelly is tasteless at first, then a wave of the foul, bitter tang of the tanning chemicals hits the back of your throat, and you have to fight the urge to vomit. But you swallow it, you force it down, because it is warm, and it is something. It fills the emptiness for a brief, deceptive moment before the true, deep hunger returns, more powerful than before. The descent into this surreal world of anti-food continues. The great, starched ruffs that were once the proud mark of a gentleman's status are now boiled down for the laundry starch within them. You chew on the starchy paste, a flavorless, cloying glue that sticks to the roof of your mouth. You are literally consuming your own status, devouring the last, pathetic symbols of your English civility. Every object in the fort is now seen through the terrible, singular lens of hunger. Is it edible? Can it be boiled? Can it be broken down into something, anything, that can be swallowed? The colonists become desperate alchemists, trying to turn the dross of their material world into the gold of sustenance. But there is no magic here. The inedible feast provides no strength. It only offers the illusion of a full stomach, while the body continues its slow, inexorable process of consuming itself. The men grow weaker, their skin turning a pale, waxy yellow. Their minds begin to fray, the constant, gnawing hunger giving way to a listless, vacant apathy. You huddle by a fire, the foul steam of a pot of boiling shoe leather filling the small room. You look at the faces of the other men around you. The gentleman, the soldier, the servant, all those titles, all those carefully constructed identities from the old world have been boiled away. You are no longer defined by your rank or your ambitions. You are defined only by your hunger. You have eaten your horses, your dogs, and your rats. You are now eating your own shoes, your own clothes. You have consumed every last remnant of the world you brought with you. You have been stripped bare, reduced to the most primitive and desperate version of yourselves. And as you look into the hollow, empty eyes of your fellow survivors, you realize with a cold, clear, and terrifying certainty that there is only one source of food left within the walls of Jamestown. January 1610. The new year has arrived, but it has brought no new hope. The calendar is a cruel joke, a meaningless marker of time in a world that has ceased to have a future. The hunger is now a permanent resident in your soul, a dull, constant, and inescapable ache. But as the winter deepens, a new and more terrifying enemy begins to stalk the weakened survivors within the fort. It is not an external threat like the Powhatan, nor a slow decline like starvation. It is a swift, invisible, and merciless killer. It is disease. The fort's location, chosen for its defensive position, has become its greatest betrayer. The swampy ground, the humid air, and, most critically, the single, shallow well from which the entire colony draws its water, have created a perfect breeding ground for sickness. For months, the colonists have been drinking this brackish, increasingly contaminated water. Now, in their severely weakened and malnourished state, their bodies have no defense left. The plague begins not with a shout, but with a whisper of fever. First one man, then another, is taken by a violent sickness that brings with it a burning heat and a debilitating flux. It is typhoid and dysentery, names you do not know, but whose effects are terrifyingly clear. The sickness spreads through the cramped, filthy huts with the speed and intensity of a fire in a dry field. As the colony's leader, you are no longer just managing hunger. You are now the chief administrator of a dying pest house. You walk through the fort, and the scene is one of pure, abject misery. The few who are still strong enough to walk are tasked with caring for the dozens who are now bedridden, their bodies racked with fever and pain. The small, dark, dirt-floored houses become charnel houses, filled with the stench of sickness and the low, constant moaning of the afflicted. You watch as strong men who survived the ocean crossing and the first hard years are reduced to helpless, feverish children in a matter of days. You see the life drain from them, their skin growing tight over their bones, their eyes becoming hollow, vacant windows into a world of suffering. There is no medicine. The colony's surgeon has long since died, and even if he were alive, his crude tools of bloodletting and purging are useless against this enemy. There is nothing to be done but to offer a sip of foul water, to wipe a fevered brow, and to wait for the inevitable end. The social fabric of the colony, already threadbare from starvation, disintegrates completely. Men die alone in their huts, their bodies often not discovered for days. The daily rituals of English life, the communal meals, the Sunday services are long forgotten. The bonds of community have been dissolved by a fear and a misery so profound that each man can only focus on his own singular survival. You sit in your own small house, shivering though not from the cold. You are one of the few who has, by some miracle, so far been spared the sickness. You look out at the silent, snow-dusted street within the fort. It is a ghost town, populated by the dead and the dying. The Powhatan siege, once the focus of all your fears, now seems like a distant, almost abstract problem. You realize you are facing a two-front war. Outside the walls, the Powhatan are starving you out, a slow, patient process of attrition. But inside the walls, this new, invisible enemy is finishing the job with a terrifying speed and efficiency. The hunger is a slow, grinding siege upon the body. The sickness is a violent, chaotic assault from within. You are trapped between two different kinds of death, and you do not know which will claim you first. February 1610. While Jamestown starves and descends into a hell of sickness and despair, a different story is unfolding on an uninhabited island hundreds of miles out in the Atlantic. This is the story of the 150 souls from the flagship, the Sea Venture, the very people whose arrival was meant to save you. They are presumed dead, lost to the great hurricane, ghosts in the memory of the Virginia Company. But they are not dead. They have, in a strange twist of fate, washed ashore in a paradise. The Isle of Devils, as Bermuda was known to sailors, turns out to be an Eden. The island is blessedly free of native inhabitants, but teeming with life. Great flocks of cahau birds, so tame they can be caught by hand, provide an endless supply of meat. Wild hogs, the descendants of pigs left by Spanish sailors years ago, roam the forests. The surrounding reefs are rich with fish and turtles. After the terror of the shipwreck, the survivors find themselves in a land of shocking abundance. Their leaders, Sir Thomas Gates and Sir George Somers, are men of immense resourcefulness. They are not the feuding, incompetent gentlemen of Jamestown. They are pragmatic veterans, and they immediately impose a disciplined order on their fellow castaways. They know that survival is not enough. Their duty is to complete their voyage to Virginia. Their plan is one of monumental ambition and ingenuity. They will build new ships. The narrative shifts to this incredible act of creation. Using only the salvaged tools and rigging from the wrecked Sea Venture and the native Bermuda cedar, which they discover is as strong as any English oak, they begin their work. It is a slow, painstaking, and almost impossible task. You witness the colony of castaways become a functioning, industrious society. Men who were officials and gentlemen now learn to saw wood and forge nails. A skilled carpenter from the Sea Venture directs the construction, his knowledge now more valuable than any nobleman's title. They build a forge to create their own tools. They hunt and fish in organized parties, ensuring a steady supply of food for everyone. 2 children are born on the island, the first English souls to begin their lives in this new paradise. The work takes nearly 10 months. Through the long winter that is killing their countrymen in Jamestown, the survivors in Bermuda are engaged in a hopeful, forward-looking act of construction. They build not 1, but 2 vessels, a pinnace named the Deliverance and a smaller one named the Patience. As the ships are finally completed in the spring of 1610, a sense of profound accomplishment fills the small community. They have not just survived, they have triumphed. They have been tested by the greatest storm the sea could muster, and they have answered by creating their own salvation from the wreckage. They are no longer just Englishmen. They are a new breed of survivor, hardened and made resourceful by the island. The story of the Sea Venture is a story of hope, of order, of successful leadership. But it is a story happening in a vacuum. As the castaways finally load their meager supplies onto their new, handmade ships and set sail for Jamestown, they are filled with a sense of their own incredible resilience. They believe they are going to rescue a struggling colony. They have no idea that they are about to sail from a story of paradise into a story of hell. February 1610. The world is now a ghost. The fort is a sepulchre. Of the 500 souls who began this winter, fewer than 100 remain, and those who still draw breath are little more than walking skeletons, their minds haunted by the constant, grinding misery of their existence. The days of organized work, of hope, of even cohesive despair are long gone. All that is left is the singular, animal focus on the next mouthful, the next hour of survival. The hunger has now surpassed all known boundaries of human experience. It has become a monstrous, creative force, driving the last survivors to acts that defy reason and morality. You have recorded it all in your journal, a catalogue of horrors that you fear no one in the civilized world of England will ever believe. You have written of men licking the blood of their fallen comrades after a skirmish with the Powhatan. You have written of the gnawing on shoe leather, of the hunting of rats. But now, you must write of the final, most terrible act of all. The living have begun to feed upon the dead. It starts as a dark, whispered rumor, a thing too horrible to be spoken of in the daylight. But soon the evidence is undeniable. The shallow graves within the fort, which the weakened survivors could barely manage to dig, are found disturbed, their contents disinterred and stolen. The dead, who had been granted the small mercy of a Christian burial, are not allowed to rest. As the colony's nominal leader, you are forced to confront this ultimate breakdown of all that is sacred. This is not the clean, if desperate, cannibalism of a lost hunting party. This is a slow, ghoulish desecration, a final surrender to the howling wilderness within your own souls. The fort is no longer just a prison of hunger. It has become a charnel house, a place of unspeakable acts. The horror reaches its absolute nadir with the case of one man. He and his pregnant wife had kept to themselves, their small hut, a place of quiet misery. But then, the woman vanishes. The man, when questioned, claims she died of sickness. But he seems stronger than the others, his cheeks less hollow, a strange, furtive energy about him. Suspicion grows. a poisonous weed in the dead garden of the fort. A search of his house reveals the truth. A truth so monstrous it threatens to shatter your own sanity. Hidden in his cellar, salted and preserved like a side of beef, is the mutilated flesh of his own wife. He is brought before you. He confesses without remorse. He speaks of the overwhelming hunger, of a madness that had seized him. He explains with a chilling, logical calm how he had planned to live on the flesh of his wife and unborn child until the supply ships arrived. You, George Percy, a gentleman of England, are now forced to sit in judgment of an act that has no place in any book of law or reason. You are the last vestige of English authority in a world that has descended into a state of pure, primal savagery. There must be a reckoning. There must be a line. To allow this to pass without justice would be to admit that you are no longer men at all. The man is summarily executed. That night, you sit in your cold, dark room, the fire long since extinguished. You do not write in your journal. You cannot. The words do not exist to describe the depths to which you have all fallen. The Christian God you were sent here to preach seems a distant, powerless phantom. The laws of England are a faint, ridiculous echo from another world. The only law here is the law of the stomach. You think of the great, ambitious charter of the Virginia Company, of its talk of glory, of gold, of a new paradise. And then you think of the scene in that man's cellar. You have been stripped of everything. You are no longer gentlemen, no longer soldiers, no longer Englishmen. You are simply creatures, trapped in a wooden cage, reduced to the most terrible and fundamental choice, to eat or to be eaten. February 1610. You sit in the cold, dark silence of your hut, the quill heavy in your hand. You have just finished writing down the events of the past week, the disturbed graves, the story of the man who murdered his wife. The words on the page seem to accuse you, to mock the very idea of a civilized record. It is a story of ghouls and monsters, a tale from the darkest pit of the human soul. You stare at the ink, and a profound, chilling thought enters your mind. Will anyone, in a future of full bellies and warm houses, ever truly believe this happened? Or will they dismiss it as a madman's fantasy, a desperate exaggeration from a forgotten time? For 400 years, that question would remain. The words of George Percy and the other survivors would be debated by historians, their horrifying accounts treated with a degree of scholarly skepticism. The story was there, but the proof remained silent, buried in the cold, dark earth of the fort until the summer of 2012. The answer to the chronicler's question came from a cellar, a 17th century trash pit, to be precise. As archaeologists were excavating this layer, filled with the discarded bones of butchered dogs and horses from the starving time, they found something else, the fragmented remains of a human girl. Through forensic analysis, they learned who she was in the broadest sense. She was about 14 years old, and isotopic analysis of her bones showed she was English and had been eating a wheat-based European diet. She was a newcomer, likely one of the unfortunate souls who arrived on the supply ships just before the siege began. They gave her a name, Jane. At first, she was another sad statistic. But as the bones were cleaned, the full, terrible truth of her story and the truth of the chronicler's words was revealed. The marks on her bones were not from a battle or an accident. They were methodical. On her skull, a series of hesitant, tentative cuts at the front showed the butcher's inexperience. These were followed by 4 powerful, parallel chops to the back of the head, a successful attempt to open the skull. The marks are unmistakable, made by a heavy cleaver. On her shin bone, the evidence was just as clear. It had been chopped through at the knee and again at the ankle, a sign of dismemberment. All along the bone were the fine, parallel striations of a knife, where the flesh had been carefully stripped away. These were not the marks of a murderer. They were the utilitarian marks of a butcher, portioning out a piece of meat. The science is irrefutable. The vague, almost mythical horror of the historical texts was now met by the cold, hard facts of forensic science. So, yes, future generations will know, they will know, because the very earth itself has held the proof, keeping a silent testament in the bones of a lost child. They will know that what I write tonight is not a madman's fantasy, it is the truth. And the truth is that we, the proud men of England, who came here to build a new world in God's name, have been reduced to this. We have become the monsters that haunt our own darkest tales. May 23rd, 1610. For 10 long months, the survivors of the sea venture have lived a strange, castaway dream in Bermuda. They have not just survived, they have triumphed. Through their own ingenuity and relentless labor, they have built 2 new ships from the wreckage of their old one, the Patience and the Deliverance. Now, they are finally completing their journey. As they sail into the mouth of the James River, their mood is one of profound relief and proud anticipation. They are the saviors, the long-lost leaders, arriving with the promise of order and a new beginning for the colony they believe has been waiting for them. The journey up the wide, placid river is beautiful. The land is a vibrant, stunning green, alive with the energy of spring. Sir Thomas Gates, the new governor, stands at the prow of the Deliverance, his eyes scanning the shoreline, expecting at any moment to see the thriving fields and bustling activity of a successful English settlement. As they round the final bend and the location of the Jamestown fort comes into view, a confused, uneasy silence falls over the rescuers. Something is wrong. There are no sentries on the watchtowers. There is no English flag flying from the pole. There are no boats on the river, no fishermen casting their nets. The gate of the triangular fort hangs open, askew on its hinges. The entire settlement is shrouded in a profound and unnatural quiet, like a place that has been cursed. The ships anchor in the river, and a single boat is rowed to the shore. Sir Thomas Gates and a small party of his men step onto the land, their muskets held at the ready, a growing dread in their hearts. They walk through the open gate into the fort, and the scene that greets them is a vision from a nightmare. The place is a ruin. The houses are dilapidated, some stripped of their wooden siding for firewood. The church is a shell. But it is the human cost that is the most shocking. Lying in the street are the gaunt, unburied bodies of the dead, and the living are scarcely distinguishable from them. A handful of figures, who seem more like spectres than men, emerge from the shadows of the derelict buildings. They are skeletal, their skin stretched tight over their bones, their eyes large and hollow in their gaunt faces. Their clothes are ragged, filthy, and hang loosely on their emaciated frames. They stare at the healthy, well-fed newcomers with a look of profound, vacant apathy, as if they are ghosts, incapable of comprehending the arrival of these men from the world of the living. You are one of these spectres. You have survived, but you are a ghost of your former self. You recognize Sir Thomas Gates, the great governor you were all waiting for last autumn. He seems like a being from another dimension, his clothes clean, his face full, his eyes clear. The first words he speaks are a choked whisper. "My God," he says, "what has happened here?" There are no joyful reunions. There are no cheers of rescue. There is only a stunned, horrified silence as the rescuers walk through the fort, a charnel house of filth, sickness, and despair. They count the survivors. Of the 500 souls who began the winter, only 60 remain. You watch as the healthy, robust men from Bermuda, who have spent their winter feasting on turtles and wild hogs, try to comprehend the scene. They have come expecting to lead a colony. Instead, they have stumbled upon a mass grave. They look at you and your fellow survivors, not with the camaraderie of fellow Englishmen, but with a mixture of horror, pity, and a barely concealed revulsion. The great rescue you have dreamed of for months has finally arrived. But it has come too late. It has not come to save the colony, but only to bear witness to its near total destruction. The conflict is no longer one of survival. It is the shocking, brutal clash of two realities. the triumphant, hopeful reality of the men who conquered Bermuda, and the grim, skeletal reality of the few who have, by some miracle, survived the hell of Jamestown. May 1610. The arrival of the Patience and the Deliverance was not a moment of salvation. It was merely a final, horrifying accounting. For 2 weeks, Sir Thomas Gates and the other leaders from the Sea Venture have tried to impose order on the ruin of Jamestown, but they have found that there is nothing left to order. The fort is a graveyard, the storehouse is utterly empty, and the 60 of you who survived the winter are too weak and traumatized to be an effective workforce. The supplies the rescuers brought from Bermuda are meager and will not last long. The initial, shocked pity of the Bermuda survivors has curdled into a grim and pragmatic understanding of the situation. They have escaped a shipwreck only to land in a plague house. The dream of a thriving Virginia colony, which they held onto for 10 months while building their ships, has died here. In the squalor and silence of this fort, Sir Thomas Gates, a practical and unsentimental soldier, makes the only decision a rational man could make. He calls for a formal assembly of all survivors, both the old and the new. You stand in the center of the fort, a gathering of ghosts, and listen as he announces the verdict. I have surveyed our stores, our defenses, and the health of our men, he begins, his voice heavy with the weight of his words. There is not enough food to last the summer. The Powhatan remain hostile, and there is no guarantee that Lord De La Warr's fleet has even survived the crossing. He pauses, letting the terrible reality of his words settle over the small crowd. To remain here is to condemn us all to the same fate as those we have lost. Therefore, I have made my decision. Jamestown is a failure. We are abandoning the colony. We will sail for the English fishing fleets in Newfoundland. From there, God willing, we will find passage home to England. The announcement is met not with protest or anger, but with a profound, exhausted silence. It is the official declaration of what you have all known in your hearts for months. The dream is dead. You are admitting defeat. For you and the other survivors of the starving time, the news brings a strange and hollow sense of relief. The suffering is finally over. You are going home. The next few days are a strange, surreal process of decommissioning your world. The cannons, too heavy to take, are dismounted and buried in the earth to keep them from being found by the Spanish or the Powhatan. Any iron tools that cannot be carried are also buried. You are hiding the last vestiges of English power from the wilderness that has so thoroughly defeated you. You take one last walk through the empty fort. It is a place of ghosts. You look into the small, dark huts where hundreds of men died, their hopes and dreams dissolving into fever and starvation. You stand in the center of the ruined church. You walk the palisade walls where you once stood watch, staring out at a land that you failed to understand. This place, which has been a scene of such profound and personal suffering, now feels strangely sacred, a monument to a terrible and tragic endeavor. On the morning of June 7th, you board the small ships. The last 60 survivors of Jamestown and the 150 castaways of the Sea Venture are crowded onto the 4 small pinnaces. There is no looking back. As the ships pull away from the shore and begin their slow journey down the James River, you do not feel a sense of escape, but one of profound and solemn failure. You look at the empty fort, its gates left open, an invitation to the wilderness to come and reclaim what is hers. You think of the immense cost of this failed dream, the hundreds of lives, the thousands of pounds sterling invested by the company, the shattered hopes of a nation. The great Virginia enterprise, which began with such grand ambition in the fine rooms of London, is ending here, in a silent, pathetic retreat. You have faced the new world, and it has broken you. As you watch the triangular fort shrink into the distance, you accept the final, brutal truth. There is nothing left to do but go home. June 8th, 1610. This is the day the dream of Jamestown officially dies. The fort is abandoned. The last 60 survivors, little more than ghosts in ragged English clothes, have been loaded onto the Patience, the Deliverance, and the colony's own pinnace. There is no ceremony, no final salute. There is only a profound, hollow silence as you and the others pull away from the shore, leaving the empty fort with its gate agape, a monument to your failure and a tomb for the hundreds who died within its walls. The journey down the wide, placid James River is a funeral procession. You sit in the small, crowded boat, looking back at the land that has so thoroughly defeated you. For 3 years, this place has been your entire world, the subject of your hopes, your fears, and your immense suffering. Now, you are leaving it forever, carrying nothing but your own lives and the heavy weight of your failure. Sir Thomas Gates, the pragmatic leader who made this difficult decision, is somber. The plan is to sail for the English fishing outposts in Newfoundland and from there to beg for passage home. It is a desperate, uncertain future, but it is better than the certain death you have just escaped. The survivors are mostly silent, too weak and too traumatized for conversation. They simply stare at the passing shoreline, at the lush green wilderness that they could not tame, a paradise that for them was a hell. The air is warm, the sky is a gentle blue, the world seems beautiful and peaceful, a cruel mockery of the horror you have just endured. You are a few hours downriver, approaching a wide bend known as Mulberry Island, when the lookout at the mast of the Deliverance gives a weak, uncertain cry. Sail, a boat ahead. Every head that is able to lift turns, a knot of pure fear tightens in your gut. A boat? Here? Your first thought is of the Spanish. A Spanish patrol from their Florida colony would mean capture, slavery, or death. Or perhaps it is the Powhatan, come to witness your final, pathetic retreat. You see it now, a longboat pulling hard against the current, heading directly for you. As it draws closer, you see the flag it is flying from its stern. It is not the flag of Spain. It is the cross of St. George. It is an English flag. A wave of confusion washes over your small, sad flotilla. Who are these men? Before you can even formulate an answer, your ship's round the bend at Mulberry Island, and you see it. The sight is so impossible, so utterly beyond the realm of belief, that for a moment you are certain you have finally succumbed to the madness of starvation. Anchored in the deep water are 3 large, well-supplied ships. They are not the battered, storm-tossed vessels of your own fleet. These are fresh from the sea, their sails neatly furled, their hulls clean and strong. It is a new fleet, a new rescue. The longboat pulls alongside your vessel. The man who stands in its bow is well-fed, his clothes are clean, and his face is a picture of confusion as he takes in the sight of your skeletal, ragged crew. "In the name of the king, who are you?" he calls out. Sir Thomas Gates, his own face, a mask of disbelief, answers, "We are the colonists of Jamestown," he says, his voice a hoarse whisper. "What is your business here?" The man's reply is a thunderclap that changes the course of history. "We are the fleet of His Excellency, the new governor, Lord de la Warr. He has arrived with 150 new men and a full year's worth of supplies to relieve the colony." A profound, unearthly silence falls over your boat. Relief. It is a feeling so immense, so powerful, and so long forgotten that your mind does not know how to process it. You look at the faces of the other survivors. Men who have not shown an emotion in months now begin to weep, their bodies shaking with quiet, racking sobs. You have been sailing towards the death of a colony, and in the space of a single heartbeat, you have been met by its resurrection. Lord de la Warr's orders are simple and absolute. You are to turn back. Jamestown is not to be abandoned. You watch as the sails of your small ships are reset, and your sad funereal procession turns around, now following the governor's great ships back up the river, back towards the fort you had just left for dead. You do not know what this new future holds, what new hardships await, but you know you have just borne witness to a miracle. The dream of Jamestown, which had died that morning, has, by an impossible, fateful chance, been reborn. June 10th, 1610. Your return to Jamestown is one of the strangest experiences of your life. You are marching back into the very tomb you just fled, but now you are part of a new, larger army. The fort, which had been a place of silent, ghostly despair just a day ago, is now filled with the sounds of disciplined activity. Lord de la Warr's men, healthy and well-equipped, move with a military purpose, clearing the debris, burying the last of the dead, and restoring a semblance of order with an efficiency that is both impressive and unsettling. The 60 of you who survived the winter are a stark and wretched contrast to these newcomers. You are still weak, still skeletal, and you are now strangers in your own home, subjects in a kingdom that has been reconquered overnight. The brief, overwhelming joy of your salvation on the river is now being replaced by the cold, hard reality of the new regime. A few days after your return, the entire colony, both the old survivors and the new arrivals, is summoned to the central square by the sound of a drum. Lord de la Warr, the new governor, stands before you, a formidable figure in fine, military-style clothes. He is not a merchant adventurer or a gentleman counsellor. He is a veteran of the brutal wars in Ireland, and he has been given absolute authority by the Virginia Company to save this colony by any means necessary. He unrolls a great parchment, his voice ringing with an iron authority that has been absent for nearly a year. He begins to read from the colony's new legal code, a document formally titled The Laws Divine, Moral and Martial. As he reads, a profound chill settles over you, a cold that has nothing to do with the weather. This is not the familiar common law of England. This is the brutal, unforgiving law of a military garrison under siege. The laws govern every aspect of your life. Every man is now considered a soldier of the colony. You will be assembled by a drum beat every morning and evening to be marched to and from your work. To refuse to work is no longer a matter for the stocks. It is an act of mutiny, punishable by death. Attendance at church, twice a day, is mandatory. To speak impiously against the Holy Trinity, or to blaspheme the name of God, is a capital crime. The punishments are spelled out with a terrifying, methodical clarity. To steal food, even a handful of grain, is to be executed. To speak a word against the authority of the governor or the Virginia Company is to be whipped or worse. To attempt to run away and live among the natives is to be shot. You listen, stunned, as the long list of offences and their brutal punishments is read out. You look at the faces of the other survivors. They, like you, had dreamed of a new world that offered more freedom, more opportunity than the rigid society of England. But the chaos and the starvation you all endured has killed that dream. The company in London has learned its lesson. It has concluded that the colony did not fail because of the drought or the siege, but because of its own idleness and lack of discipline. And this is their cure. To save the colony from its own worst impulses, they have decided to put it in chains. That night, you sit in your hut, the new strict curfew having plunged the fort into a silent, disciplined darkness. The low, desperate moans of the starving time have been replaced by the steady, marching tread of the sentries on the palisade walls. The fort is safer now. It is cleaner. It is, for the first time, orderly, but it is not free. You reflect on the terrible, bitter irony of your survival. You have endured a year of unimaginable horror, a descent into a world without law, without order, without any restraint but the animal will to live. You have survived that chaos. But the price of your salvation is the complete loss of the very English liberties you believed you were bringing to this new world. The dream of a free Virginia is dead, replaced by the reality of a military work camp. You have been saved from the brink of death, only to find yourself a prisoner once more. But this time, your jailer is not the Powhatan, but your own countryman. Summer 1610. The colony is transformed. Under the iron fist of Lord de la Warr and his laws divine, moral and martial, Jamestown has become a place of grim military efficiency. The fields within the palisade are now being properly planted, the houses are being repaired, and the threat of internal chaos has been extinguished by the threat of the whipping post and the gallows. You are no longer starving. You are disciplined, you are orderly, and you are angry. The trauma of the starving time has left a deep and bitter scar on the colony's soul. In the minds of the English, the memory of their suffering is inextricably linked to the image of the Powhatan warriors, the silent, unseen jailers who enforced their starvation. The cautious, often contemptuous, respect of the John Smith era has been replaced by a deep-seated hatred and a burning desire for retribution. The English no longer see the Powhatan as a people to be traded with or managed. They see them as an existential threat to be subjugated or eliminated. The lesson learned from the Winter of Horror was not one of cooperation or adaptation. It was a simpler, more brutal lesson. Never again will we be weak. Never again will we be at their mercy. Lord de la Warr, a veteran of England's brutal campaigns in Ireland, is the perfect instrument for this new, aggressive policy. He does not send ambassadors to Chief Wahunsenakar to reopen trade. He sends an ultimatum. He demands the return of every English tool and weapon the Powhatan have acquired, and the surrender of the men responsible for killing English settlers during the siege. It is a demand he knows will be refused. It is a demand designed to be refused. When the chief's defiant rejection is received, de la Warr has the justification he needs. He declares a war of conquest. The First Anglo-Powhatan War begins not as a series of pitched battles, but as a cruel and systematic campaign of terror and attrition, a strategy the English call total war. You, as a member of the colony's council, are now a part of this new brutal machinery. You do not fight, but you witness the preparations and hear the reports from the soldiers who do. The campaigns are horrifyingly effective. A force of soldiers, now well-fed and disciplined, will march on a Powhatan town. They do not come to parley. They come to destroy. They burn the sacred temples. They systematically cut down the vast fields of corn, the source of the Powhatan's life. Just as the Powhatan tried to starve you, they burn the villages, and they kill any who resist. You speak to a young soldier who has just returned from a raid on the Paspahegh tribe's capital. His face is flushed with a victor's pride, but his eyes hold a haunted look. He tells you of the attack, of the burning of the village. He tells you, his voice dropping, of the capture of the chief's wife and her children. He describes how, on the journey back down the river, the English soldiers, against orders but with no real reprimand, threw the children overboard and shot them in the water. The Queen herself was taken to a nearby settlement and executed. You listen to this, and you feel a profound, soul-sickening sense of transformation. The desperate, often chaotic violence of the early years has been replaced by this, a cold, calculated, and utterly ruthless policy of extermination. This is not the struggle for survival. This is the business of empire. You stand on the palisade wall, looking out at the Virginia that is now a battlefield. The flawed, often foolish, but recognizably human world of the early colony is gone. The era of diplomacy, the tense but hopeful bartering of the iron bargain, is a distant memory. The English came to this land seeking profit, and in their failure, they nearly perished. Now, having survived, they seek something else, not just to live in this world, but to dominate it completely. The starving men of winter have become the well-fed conquerors of summer. The memory of their own suffering has not taught them empathy. It has taught them to be merciless. You realize that the true, lasting consequence of the starving time was not just the death of hundreds of colonists, but the death of any possibility of a peaceful coexistence. The long, bloody war for Virginia has begun. Virginia, 1612. Years have passed. The world has been remade. The chaotic, desperate settlement you once knew is gone, replaced by a colony that is disciplined, fortified, and slowly, cautiously becoming prosperous. The harsh military rule of the laws divine, moral and martial, has forged a new kind of colonist, hardened, obedient, and industrious. The war with the Powhatan continues, a bloody, grinding affair of raids and reprisals. But the English are no longer prisoners in their own fort. They are now the masters of the surrounding land. A new, lucrative crop is beginning to transform the colony's fortunes. The sweet-scented tobacco cultivated by John Rolfe is a sensation in London, and its promise of wealth has brought a new wave of investment and settlers. The original, foolish dream of gold has been replaced by the more practical and profitable reality of smoke. You are a respected member of the colony's council, a survivor, an elder statesman of this small, violent English world. You live in a new, sturdy, timber-framed house built to last. You are no longer starving. You are, by the standards of this place, a wealthy and successful man. One evening you sit down to supper. It is not a feast, but it is a meal of a quality you once believed you would never experience again. There is roasted venison, greens from your garden, and a tankard of strong English ale. And on the plate before you there is a simple, miraculous thing, a thick slice of proper wheat bread, baked that morning in the communal oven. You pick up the bread. It is heavy, solid, and warm in your hand. You bring it to your nose and inhale its rich, wholesome scent. As you take the first bite, the simple, honest taste of it, the taste of grain, of yeast, of civilization is so powerful, it almost brings you to tears. Your mind is flooded with ghosts. In an instant, you are no longer in your comfortable house in 1612. You are back in the cold, stinking hell of the winter of 1609. The taste of the bread is instantly replaced by the phantom taste of boiled shoe leather, a foul, glutinous jelly that filled your belly but offered no life. You can feel the gnawing, all-consuming ache of a hunger so deep it became a form of madness. You can see the hollow, vacant eyes of the men who died beside you, their bodies little more than skeletons. You remember the profound, unnatural silence of a fort that had eaten its own dogs. You look out the window of your house at this new Virginia. You see the neat rows of tobacco plants, a crop that requires ever more land, pushing the Powhatan further and further away. You see the fortified blockhouses that now stand on the edge of the settlement, a permanent testament to the state of war that has become the new normal. You see the disciplined companies of soldiers marching back from a patrol. This new, prosperous Virginia is a land built on a foundation of iron discipline and relentless, grinding warfare. The bread in your mouth is the taste of survival. It is the taste of victory against the wilderness, against the siege, against the specter of starvation itself. But as you chew, you realize it is seasoned with the bitter memory of its true cost. This simple meal is the end result of a long and terrible equation. The price of this bread was the lives of the hundreds of English men, women, and children who perished in the mud and sickness of the early years. The price was the death of the dream of a peaceful coexistence with the native people, a dream replaced by a brutal war of conquest. And the price was the loss of a certain kind of English freedom, sacrificed for the military discipline required to endure. You have survived. The colony has survived. And in this small, profound moment of eating a piece of bread, you understand the brutal lesson of Jamestown. You came here to build a new England, a place of freedom and fortune, but you have created something else. You have created a new Virginia, a place that is hard, violent, and unforgiving, just like the land it has conquered. And the taste of survival, you realize, is forever flavored with the salt of your own tears and the blood of all that was lost. And so, the tale of Jamestown's first, desperate years comes to a close. A somber lesson in the brutal cost of survival. The hardships of that long-ago world can now fade into the quiet of your room. Let the memory of the cold, the hunger, and the fear recede, leaving only the peace of the present moment. Your own long day is over, and you have earned your own place of safety and rest. If our journey into the past helped you to unwind tonight, a quiet like is always deeply appreciated. And if you wish to join us for more stories, please consider subscribing to Sleepy History Studio. Thank you for sharing your time with me. May your sleep be peaceful and deeply restorative. Until our next story, good night.